All right. Is it on yet? All right, cool. All right. So we're going to get started here. What? All right, hold on a sec. I have a lame-ass PC with only a VGA. It's a scratch box. Also, since I'm talking on vulnerability management, this is an unpatched Windows machine. So what happens when you let users control it? I've been denying the creators update for over a month on this.
Look at your sidebar.
Here we go. So, here goes jumping on in. I don't know if any of you remember when this came out on Twitter. When I saw that at night, it happened to be a night that I was at home drinking, so I just kind of like immediately felt busted. But now that I'm getting older, I'm kind of pre-diabetic, so I'm drinking vodka now instead of whiskey. So the topic today is vulnerability management. My name's Derek. That's it for my intro. This is mostly a brain dump. I'm very greedy, so I get as much time as I can into the presentation. I do not present in a standard fashion. Tell people what you're going to say it, tell them what you said. Nope, this is a freaking brain dump. These slides are ugly, there's shit all over them. It's made for you to download and use as a reference later. That's just the way it is. So, the other disclaimer, I'm not perfect. But I am a smartass. And I'm jaded and I'm cynical. If I come off wrong, I apologize in advance because I've been told that a few times. I don't pretend to know everything. In fact, not only do I make mistakes, I've made a lot of mistakes I tell people not to make. I make the same mistake 2 and 3 times. I'm human. So vulnerability management, an old topic. I've actually been presenting on this since around like 2003-ish, believe it or not. Half the content in this presentation is from the 2003-2004 era. That's how little things change. I actually have an entire talk that proves that we're stuck in an endless loop of 2003-2004, minus some new tools and buzzwords. So I always start off with the basics. Anybody here less than 3 years into the field? All right, a few. So what I always train on new people, there's only 4 reasons anyone's ever going to be nice to you, anywhere, anytime in the world. They either fear you, they're getting ready to knife you in the back, they're either trying to be nice to you so you'll shut up and go away, or they want something from you. This includes even if they're being nice to you to make themselves feel better, that's what they want from you. So, there's your InfoSec view of the world, the 4 reasons people are nice to other humans. That's it. It always fits into one of those 4 categories. So vulnerability management has a lot of definitions. Over the years, I've read a lot. Not going to read this slide to you. It's probably not worth reading. I made my own. I use bullet points. I'm a corporate geek. I live in Microsoft Office. I speak in sound bites. Executives and management understands that easier. I also am thinking of adding sock puppets into my stuff for when I'm in meetings because I'm getting bored the more time goes on. And you can buy sock puppet kits off Amazon, by the way. If you get bored in a meeting, Google it. You'll find them all. So basically, vulnerability management. Discover your patches that are missing. Provide governance for your patch management. You can find misconfigurations if you're doing trusted scanning. You can see stuff that's not hardened. Maybe the IP stack isn't hardened, etc. Maybe there's services that shouldn't be on there. You can discover applications, some application vulnerabilities, like your backup software that's completely vulnerable to a buffer overflow, right? Helps you prioritize remediation. It can help you discover rogue devices if you're scanning by subnet, not just licensing for the host you're scanning. You can validate that your agents are out there. If you're scanning all of your subnets, you'll know if your agents are out there, your endpoint protection agents, because if your product doesn't have a rule, you can write one like an oval check to see if it's out there. It also assists with IOC hunting. I just add that in. If you're looking for something in the Windows world, you have a lot of Windows endpoints, especially when you have a regedit you're looking for. If you're doing trusted scanning, you can write an oval check and find that. So you already have something that's probably allowed to see every segment in your environment that you can quickly repurpose and use. You can use it during incident response as well. So, it can also assist, again, intel for your IR processes. Anyone have a CMDB? Keep your hand up if it's up to date. Yeah, man, I've failed at that for 20 years. I've never seen one completely up to date for 20 years. There's always surprises everywhere. There's just, how'd that shit get there? I don't know. You know? So basically, part of every project, what does that mean? Simple. Scan the crap out of everything that comes into your environment, new technologies people are looking at. Here's a hint for your products. Use the PCI scan profile because it does all 56,000 TCP and UDP ports. So you'll find all the weird stuff. Why pay someone else to do that? Little bit of bleedage into the talk. What I do now is when I have pen tests run, I dump an XML dump from my scanning tool of my full vulnerability data. Here, I'm not paying you to run those. Start here. I'm not going to pay you to run OpenVAS for the first 3 nights of your assessment. I'm going to pay you to actually pen my environment. When implementing a tool, Some of these I just touch points on. Don't panic. I don't read slides to people. And like I said, this is meant for you to download later. It's actually already up on my website. And oh, by the way, my website is ugly. It looks like crap. I don't care. Friday night, I have a choice to make. Binge drink, update my website. Guess what loses every time? That's basically it. InfoSec, alcohol, weapons, training, martial arts. There's nothing else to life. You don't believe me? Ask my family. I'm the guy always pissed off, never talking to anyone, and I'm like, why don't you talk to your brothers and sisters and cousins? You know why? Because they can't pass the frickin' technical interview. Get out of here. Got no time for them. Anyway, number one on the list, accuracy. All tools get a little bit different results. Here's my big one, TCO. I know you can script everything to death and do everything you want to and spend your own time developing all kinds of cool shit. What I want is I want bang for my buck. I am business first. Actually, my undergraduate degree is in business. That's why the managers listen to me and don't sit me down at the little kids' table. I speak their language. So TCO, I want to get something that's going to scan the crap out of my environment, get the data useful to people, make it useful with the least amount of effort possible. I'm not a software development shop. I'm a security team. There's a difference, right? You got to have roles within the tool, right? All your reporting, historical trending, the stuff's got to be right there. You might end up pulling it off and putting it somewhere else anyway through APIs. So you really never know about that. The other one people forget, I do use the freeware stuff. Everybody should be using Kali. By the way, defenders should be using Kali because you just use the stuff to double check your tools as well, and that's also how you make sure your alerting's working. Go try to curb roast your environment and see if you detect it. You don't need to pay someone to do that. Okay? Actually, you can if you want. You can pay a high school, they can watch a YouTube video and do it for you. And I know, smart alecky, a lot of us don't have time for that, but reality is use open source tools to double check your commercial ones. Some of the things people do when they sell you tools tell you can do patch management and vuln scanning and all this other stuff all in one. Just be wary. You want separation of duty. Typically, the people that run vuln management and check up on primarily patching is what it turns into aren't the people actually implementing the patches. That's usually the sysadmins with root on all the platforms. Vulnerability management cycle. Scanning, remediation, reporting. It's a continuous process. I am a circle slide hater. I've been hating circle slides since around 2003, so there's my circle slide. Eat, dump, wipe, flush. Feel free to give this out to anyone you want to. I send it to salespeople I deal with. There's your frickin' circle slide. I'm sick of hearing the damn circle slide. Everything's continuous. I got it. So, anyway. Took me a few minutes to make that. It's really high quality, right? Marketing budget of in between shots of vodka, spending nothing. So, scanning. Dumpster fire time, right? You will take stuff down when you scan, right? But what do you want to know before you scan? Because a lot of people just go run the scanner right away because they want to get all that red marked stuff all over the place and freak everyone out. You want to know what's in your environment. Do you have SCADA systems? Do you have weird IoT stuff? Do you have old phone systems that will crash? Do you know your segmentation, right? Any regulatory requirements, what you need to accomplish with what you're doing. Think about it first. What all you have to scan. Can you scan it all? What all do you want to scan? Where do you want to start? So start getting to know your network and some of the basic stuff that's out there, some of the applications and operating systems, right? Then when you scan, wow, this is an old list. Look at that. Harris Stat. Remember that one? Some of these slides haven't been updated since 2003. Again, vodka. So, take a baseline. Don't panic on the set of results. There's going to be a lot of highs, criticals, all that kind of stuff, right? A lot of your mediums and lows are usually hardening settings. Always do change controls when you do scans. Cover your butt. Always do change controls when you do pens. Always do change controls when you do red team exercises, purple team exercises. Have change controls and test plans in corporate America. One other thing, a warning quick. I usually work in larger environments. So for me, if I'm scanning less than 30,000 live IPs, that's a small environment to me. So some of my stuff might not scale down. I've been told that before. So I am speaking mostly to corporate enterprise, not government. That's where a lot of the smart assery comes in. Do some math. If you have 1,000 workstations, you can run one scan of one workstation with Wireshark running on the workstation. The size of the PCAP file, which you can do capture filters to get it just from the scanner to you, is the size of crap going across your network. If you have older, crappier networks, do a little bit of math. Where I'm working at now, we have so much bandwidth, I never worry about anything. I'll kick off 5 scans at once and not care. It's kind of cool, right? So just make sure you think about that when you're doing the workstation stuff. Just fun that you have with it. moving from a change control every scan to regularized activity. So in my environment currently now, I have monthly scans, internet I'm trying to turn to weekly, but can you take action on the data that fast? It sounds so cool to scan all the time, and then you're like, do you have the time to actually deal with the crap you're going to find? Maybe not. Every live IP address in every one of my data centers is scanned every week. Same window, rolling change. I don't have to enter the change control every time. And then when I blast out all the workstations, business offices, and all that stuff, it happens on a monthly schedule. No change controls needed. Don't get too trivial with people and say, if my scan takes your stuff down, then it's susceptible to a DOS attack. That's true, but it's no comfort to the business unit that just lost money because you took their shit down. Keep that in mind. Make sure your scanner knows and documents when it touches the hosts. Most of them now do start time and end time to the exact nanosecond for the scans, right? And then have a well-defined exception process. Boy, that one bullet's so deceptive. I have an entire other talk that goes into that stuff in more detail. How to do exceptions and risks and process all that all the way through. It's kind of like its own GRC talk in a way. Here's the one I think the biggest miss people have for scanning. Make this before you do the scan. What do you do when something bad happens? Someone calls you, I had to reboot my server. Well, do you have to reboot or do you have to restart a service? That's part of your troubleshooting gathering. So you'd want to verify if a certain product or service had to be bounced or the whole server. If anything they do know, because they're probably panicking just trying to return to service in the middle of the night. Then you're going to get in the middle between the application or software vendor and your vulnerability scanner vendor. If you have a set of questions to send them to gather the information, all of my admins in my environment have the process behind this. So when something bad happens, they know the 5 steps we're going to iterate through. I have more credibility because of that, because I have a plan. I'm not just jumping through my butt figuring stuff out as I go along. Cover this one before you start doing scans. It'll help you a lot. Scanning time of day stuff is important, right? By the way, I just check my phone because I use it as a timer because I got a big mouth and I got like 80 slides and I hit some at different levels depending on how I'm feeling that day. Scanning segments. It's important time of day. Hey, you can scan your servers when we're doing maintenance. No, you can't. They're doing maintenance. The servers are bouncing. Right? You can scan workstations at night. No, you can't. They're workstations. They're turned on during the day and turned off at night in a lot of places. You got to figure all that kind of stuff out for your environment, right? And then trusted versus untrusted. Obviously, if it's on the internet and you're running a trusted scan, you got a problem because you're logging into your stuff from the internet. That's bad. Internal, run trusted. I used to have slides to show, here's what you get data from trusted versus untrusted. You know what? Done. Not going to debate it. Going to do the jerk statement. My decades of experience tells me just shut up and use trusted scans. Use root keys, use admin, just do it. You're going to need it. You're going to need the data. Hear me now, believe me later. Here's more on frequencies. I often speak ahead of some slides because I don't really know the order of these anymore because I reorder the decks at weird times. So again, you want to go range-based, not inventory-based. You want to cover, that's how you cover all the rogue devices. Wireless segments, yeah, you can do it now. The equipment's getting better. It used to be an issue before. And again, without continuous scanning, detection of rogues is spotty at best. You're still not going to solve the rogue device issue with something that's not like NAC, right? Just a reality. Remediation. So I picked a dumpster fire theme. I must have been in a bad mood when I reviewed these things that day. I was probably doing vulnerability management crap. Remediation's not just patching. Newsflash. That's the one that gets all the press because patching sucks, patching's difficult, everybody hates it. By the way, if you can get your Microsoft and Linux OSs to a 30-day patch cycle for urgents and criticals, and you can get your databases to a quarterly, you're doing awesome. And if you're in a PCI environment, PCI will help you get there for the monthly. If you're in a PCI environment, even most QSAs, I'm a recovering QSA. I drank a lot of whiskey when I was a QSA. Basically, yeah, quarterly patches for stuff like Oracle, you're doing good if you can patch that quarterly, especially if you have like 300 or 400 databases. So, hardening, patching, could be architecture changes. You may do scans that show you, wow, we need to segment that crap off. Everyone got new conference room gear, the new big smart screens. A lot of them are Android devices on the back. In corporate land, we call those IoT, and we try to firewall all that crap off. Also, standing desks are fun ones. Here's what you haven't seen yet. A lot of call centers have these stir desks. You can make the desk stand. You can make the desk sit. Could you imagine a DOS against a call center to make the desks keep moving all day? An entire call center would shut down. And it's all just Android stuff. It's not hard to do that to them. So it's like if you want to take out a call center, take out their desks. So, hardening. Put a definition out there because I'm lazy. I don't know if I mentioned that yet, but In corporate America, reuse everything and cite your references and your sources, right? But anyway, hardening, basically reducing the attack surface. You'd be amazed when you run trusted scans, you can find out, oh my God, not only do we have to live with Microsoft web servers, they're all installed to the C drive. How'd that happen? Right? In the old days, oh, the HTR mappings are in place. What? So you can find out stuff that wasn't installed to your standards, that wasn't properly hardened. Things get rebuilt in the middle of the night to do return to service by sysadmins. That's where I started out at. You're not thinking about putting all the patches on necessarily. At 2 a.m., you're thinking about my boss's boss's boss is on this frickin' bridge and he won't shut up. Please just make him shut up. Turn off the firewalls. Turn off everything. Make him shut up. Make him go away. I can't take it anymore. Patching. There you go. All you need to know about it. I love that picture. Architecture changes can be, by the way, this really didn't have nothing to do with this presentation. There's a couple of those in there. You know why I put this in there? Because I can. My presentation. I like the picture. Architecture changes. For all the people doing all the SCADA stuff and ICS stuff, they segment the snot out of their networks. So I just figured I'd put this in because it's kind of cool. They're a little bit ahead of us in some areas. You do need to do more segmentation. The one, so the one that hit the news recently, the client list for a casino, the whales, the heavy hitters, were compromised through the fish tank in the lobby because it was the temperature gauge on the fish tank that was an IoT device. Now, they probably angered at least one whale, and for that one whale's business, they probably could have had 10 firewall teams with 10 different firewalls in there segmenting that IoT crap off their network. Gather that stuff up and save it. Save the links to it. Save a web archive of the file if you're using Internet Explorer. Put it in PowerPoints. Keep that stuff around. When you send that stuff to directors, you get approvals to get more technologies for segmenting your network. Over time, if you do it right, not end of the world stuff, but say, by the way, this stuff really does happen, comes in handy. Sometimes it can be a tool implementation. Laps. Does anyone here remember Lieberman software? So back in 2002, we had a problem. We used to call lateral movement island hopping. And instead of pass the hash, it was crack the one account that you know is everywhere, the administrator account, and just use the password all over the place. So it was just different terms. So LibreSoft in 2002 said, you should randomize your local admin passwords. How many people have their local admins randomized? More now because of laps. So you've been able to do it easily since 2002. So sometimes, I got the island hopping from 2000. Yay! So the other thing, security zones I want to point out. Do not ever use security zones and segmentation. Do not use a submarine as a reference. Submarines are actually made to sink. There's only one little compartment that if it fills up, it won't sink. A very cool person stopped by after a talk of mine and corrected me. Use surface ships for that analogy, not submarines. We're watching the movies wrong. Also, Iron Maiden fans out there? Come on, yes. Old Iron Maiden. The first 2 albums, they rock, yes. So, they're not submariners, they're submariners. I said, oh, you're a submariner? We hate that word. We're submariners. Got it. And that's where I got the correction. Very cool one. Surface ships, not subs. Making scan results actionable. You can use ticketing systems built into the scanner. You can use your own ticketing system. I find they both suck. The reason they do is because do you do one ticket per IP for everything wrong with it? Or one ticket per vulnerability with all the IPs on it? You start getting all these endless conversations. Basically, what I do is you have patch deployment software for your platforms. For Microsoft, take all the security updates and throw them out every month. It's what it always comes down to. You can play all the games you want to. CVSS versus whatever. All these crap people do. And at the end of the day, throw all your security updates out through your patch management tool. And report on your patches through maybe your patch management tool, not this. But also, you may have to do artifact alert. You may need to maintain reports as you're doing them for proof that you're doing stuff, and remediation over time comes in handy for stuff like SOX reporting, PCI reporting. The other one I always say is to internet scan data. Feel free to send that out to your teams through your email system internally, because if it's on the internet, get it? Everyone has it already anyway. You're already behind the people that want to use it against you. So again, in product ticketing systems, you can do some tricks with stuff. Some of them will let you cut tickets for only certain things. So you can say, I only want urgent vulnerabilities for these 5 segments cut. So you can help prioritize through a ticketing system. And sometimes you can automate that with some of the products. They're getting good enough where you can say, don't cut a ticket for 0 days. Anybody ever print off a PDF and hand it to a sysadmin for anything? It's like, thanks for nothing. I mean, my recycle bin was empty. It was getting lonely. Why would you tell an admin to patch a 0-day when the definition of a 0-day is something that doesn't have a patch? Why would that crap ever be on reports that go anywhere near sysadmins? Who cares? So, you're telling me I have a problem, and I can't do anything about it. Thanks, Mr. Security Person, you're awesome. Oh, and the world's ending every day. Yay! Little kids table. Just get ready for the... Good news is there's like cookies, cake, and ice cream there. So, again, prioritization. I love it. You know, first you go by asset value. Okay, we don't even know what's on our networks. Alright? There is one unique trick you can use to find high-value targets. It's the stuff nobody will let you touch. That's the old consultant's trick. Which systems can't you patch? Okay, those. Which ones have an outage window of only 2 hours a year? That's where the money's at, right? As always, remember threat modeling. I have a whole separate talk on that. Probability versus likelihood. So that comes into play especially with out-of-band patching. If you're telling someone to put a patch in because they need to do it right now and drop what they're doing, you need to be able to show them why it's likely to happen and what the impact would be. You need to have a little bit of pseudoscience or a little bit of science behind you before you just tell people to drop what they're doing and have entire teams patching stuff. Right? Threat intel. A lot of talks on that in the past few years. Threat intel has been being built into these products for like the past well over a decade. They'll tell you what's in a crimeware kit and what's not, which would increase the probability. The knowledge bases of any modern vulnerability tool will tell you if it's in Metasploit, which increases the probability and the ease of attack, etc. So you do have some threat intel with your products, whether you realize it or not. Again, CVSS, no. I've always been a fan of Metasploit-based. Since Metasploit was released, when it was released, most of us downloaded it right away and said, ooh, here's how we prioritize stuff. If it's in there, it goes first. Pretty easy. Life's as simple or as complex as you make it. So which one's more vulnerable? Host A, no canned exploits, but it's 3 remotely exploitable vulnerabilities. Host B has it in Metasploit. Host B. Configurations. Host A, no remotely exploitable. This is the only time I've ever used a stupid slide transition. I almost hate them as much as circle slides. I just keep this in here to aggravate myself. I'm weird that way. See, a blank admin password trumps all your crap. Yeah, interesting. Now, if only you had a solution that was randomizing your local admin passwords. So again, prioritizing on location, data criticality. I already covered this one. I usually talk ahead of myself. Internet facing is still stuff you typically address first. That's kind of a no-brainer. You still got to do that. You maintain a clean internet presence. Data centers still have a large amount of data concentrated there. I will say, so in corporate America, everything ends up in Excel, and Excel ends up on every workstation. All right? And for those of you that are curious to track APT, this is from I borrowed this from the Smart Aleck talk. Microsoft had Source stolen off a workstation in 2000. So I don't know what all the people are saying in all the different media outlets, whatever. So myself and all of my peers up there in Chicago, corporate security land, have been aware of what we need to do for endpoints since the year 2000 was when we were woke up to that. We didn't wait till like 12, 11, 10, whatever, until all the new terms were made. We kind of, ooh, someone stole source code off a workstation. It's kind of like, how do you break into a PCI environment? I don't know, through a dev box, through a non-PCI environment. You ever watch kids have a snowball fight? Maybe people that don't grow up in their snow, they can't learn that lesson. It's obvious stuff, right? Anyway. Still use Twitter for intel. So this one, I put an example up there. Does everyone know what curb roasting is? If not, Google it afterwards. Here's the fun one. Most of your vulnerability management products are not going to make this urgent or critical. I checked a few of them, and I'm not going to name names. I never do that. I actually just slam everyone and everything when I'm up here. I don't even speak on behalf of my companies. I just get to take everyone to town. It's more fun that way. So most of them aren't going to put this as critical or urgent. Long story short, in most Active Directory environments, there is no patch for this. Typically, if you get a username and password, so you're on as a regular user, you can usually get DA within about 2 hours in an average environment. You're welcome. Not to drop that and not give you where to go, start reading up on it. So far, I've shown this to about a couple dozen friends at their companies, and every one of them came up that, yep, you can do it to us too. So you can probably go from a username, having a username password on your network to DA, domain admin, in a couple hours using this technique. There is no patch for it. And the remediation is to set like 28 character passwords on all your service accounts. Good luck with that. If you got hundreds of them, it's only going to take about 2 years. Learn to monitor for it. I just put this in here to show threat intel. There's various levels of threat intel that you have. Where does it intersect in vulnerability management? You can put in hash values and search for them. So there's a little bit of intersection where you can take some of your threat intel and start using your vulnerability scanner that's already out there to look for the stuff in the environment for some of your threat hunting. This one is, trying to get too gone, but, so, risk. This is how not to sound like a little kid. Like I said, I have another talk that goes into this for almost a half hour. The world can't end every day, and you gotta figure out how you analyze things in a cohesive fashion for your security exceptions, your out-of-band patching, right? Your risk exceptions that you find on assessments. It all goes through the same process. And it really comes down to you're trying to get as much science into it as you can. And yeah, you'll hear people say we don't have actuarial tables in our industry. You can still get a little bit of stuff going in this. Examples for likelihood. The systems in question, are they patched regularly? This is for more looking at stuff that you find. It might not be a patch you found. It might be a hardening issue, but when you're trying to say X% of probability of something, you've got skills of attacker. Is code available? How exploitable is it? Is there a third-party gap that you can't cover? Like, even if you patch that system and you're telling them we're going to patch this system, we're good now, don't tell someone you're good now if it's connected to a third party that's not good. That's the kind of stuff that's always got to be in your mind. So I always throw a little bit of risk stuff in every talk because of this. You got to be thinking in terms of that. So, where's the location at in the network? How easy is it accessible? Skill of the attacker's exploitability. Stuff like that. You'll take this and make it your own and make it bigger, smaller. You can get all kinds of arguments. This one's fun. X dollars financial impact. Every answer is 250 million. $1 billion, right? I have a $100 bill. And then here's the InfoSec people telling the business, spend $80 to protect that $100 bill. Then there's the business going, now I'm down to $20. Thanks for nothing. This helps you get to that kind of stuff. I've done 4 out-of-band patches in 6 years. That's it. Only 4 hit my radar to do was out-of-band patches where I'm currently at. And every time we did, we gave them a matrix that showed them why we made the decision. Public exploit available, internet facing, checking off all this stuff. Impact as much as we could from downtime or a number of records stolen. Bad press, does this even matter anymore? My real smart aleck one, Home Depot got hacked. They didn't spend money on security for 12 years ahead of time. I'm not seeing a lot of numbers come out on that, never have. I was in a group with a bunch of, like a CSO dinner group talking about this. I think they won. I think by not spending for 10 years, I think they came out ahead. So there you go. Use that to justify your budget. That's why no one talks about Home Depot. They probably won by not doing security. Homage for prioritization, because it gets to be a tricky subject. If you're going a controls-based framework, map to a risk framework. NIST will even tell you maybe start with the CIS top 20. So maybe you go that as your prioritization, looking at things like that for prioritizing what gets fixed in your environment. Might help if you got open gaps on certain controls that you know about, like your data security is really weak and you're going to start at your database servers because they're really horrible, or I don't know. Just throwing it out there, there's ways to look at prioritization. Don't forget about your overall program of how you're categorizing risks in your environment and prioritizing projects and stuff. My own personal argument for Center for Net Security, they're moving Control 4, which is continuous vulnerability assessment, to control number 3. I think it should be control number 1, because I think 1 and 2, which are inventory of devices and software, will never happen. Give it up. Just give up on it. Submit. It ain't gonna happen. CMDBs are what you tell auditors you have in place and give them reports out of to shut them up and tell them to go away. Remember one of the 4 reasons of being nice to people? Be nice to your auditors to get rid of them. Placate them. Sorry, no, I didn't say that. So, data must be actionable. Excel works in corporate America sometimes, right? Again, patch management tools work. See all the stuff listed as critical and high? Click the buttons and deploy that every 30 days. Get your patch windows negotiated out with your businesses. For databases, it's every 90 days. It's always going to come down to that. You can do all this. I've seen people analyze stuff literally for weeks, and at the end of the day, they click 3 buttons and go. That's what it's going to come down to. The data's going to add on to that. And then again, the extraneous one. Don't give people 0-day stuff they can't do anything about. So again, moral of the story, you're going to tune the results that you give to people. You're going to pick your battles. You're going to go with criticals and highs typically. That's what all this kind of sums up. There we go. Guess what this has to do with the talk? Nothing. Thank you. Exactly. My favorite frickin' meme. I send this thing. Yeah, all right, I'm kind of old, so I use memes, and I don't know how to do all the GIF stuff or whatever, GIF stuff or whatever the hell it is. So, right, old fart thing. I keep this on I send this all over the place to people all the time. I'm in the middle of meetings, and I'll just throw it out to someone randomly. So I do it in my presentations now. Reporting a dumpster fire again. All right, metrics. So I've read some of those books on metrics that everyone's probably read. I came down to it and said, knowing that I'm lazy and I need to distill this down a little bit, metrics, drive behaviors, track progress, show work done to reward the teams for doing work. There you go. I make my life that simple. I make sure everybody knows we're behaving correctly, we're patching, we're hardening. I show that we're patching and hardening, and I make sure everyone knows that all the sysadmins at my company bust their butts. So, by the way, another thing too, for operationalizing, all of my sysadmins have logins to my vuln management tool so they can do their own follow-up scans. They all have access to the data at all times. And when you start getting them into the tool and they start learning more about it, then they use it more, you get your renewals more, and that's how you operationalize stuff. So I have an entire talk on operationalizing security. That's one of the ones covered in that as well. It's like how not to look like a moron or just how to get stuff in the environment and keep it there. So the vulnerability management tool, there's other teams besides mine that want that renewal every year. It's not just the security team that wants to see that stay. So worst to use, average vulnerabilities per host. It's not even worth discussing. Vulnerabilities by platform. Guess if you're a Microsoft hater or a Linux hater and you want to justify one or the other over the other, it's crap. How about just overall vulnerability status with stoplights, right? Keep them at an aggregate level. Scorecards are just high-level statuses. Here's an old one. Ooh, look at that. By the way, PowerPoint theme is one of the 90s PowerPoint themes. I ain't changing. I still listen to Motorhead when I'm binge drinking every Friday night, okay? And I like grunge. Sabbath's first album is still one of the best damn heavy metal albums ever made in the history of our species. Their first album. This is an old Excel thing. I'm keeping that too. But I don't use that anymore. I've gone more to the new green. I split off vulnerability and patch reporting. So the vulnerabilities are the hardening items. I focus on just patching for the operational decks that go forward and say, here, we're patching. Here's the amount of stuff that has stuff less than a month, which shouldn't be patched because we patch monthly. Get it? So you're counting for all that red in there. Here's the stuff that's 2 to 3 months old, so we're missing some stuff. Here's the stuff over 3 that we've totally lost it on. Then they can drill down in, and oftentimes it's because, well, we have to live with Java or an old version of Internet Explorer. And then that gets highlighted. Then eventually you move that to the obsolescence software report. Hey, we can't update our crap. We're stuck with this old stuff. Here it is. It's still there. Then eventually you just have someone sign something off every year, and then they'll make you finally do the upgrade. So, context, again, most important point of this, don't send a slide with just numbers. I showed you that one slide with numbers. You add context, add the bullet points. Here's the law of corporate America. Everything you send gets forwarded. So if you ain't got a few bullet points, think of Twitter, man. Get good at that. I'm bad, but I'm like a fat old guy, so I can't tweet worth a crap. But I can do corporate sound bites because we're allowed more than Twitter allows. And anyway, get your bullet points in there. Get your talking points. Send them with it. It's going to get forwarded up without you. That way there's at least some hope of context when you're not around. When it's being all your stuff that you do and your team does, it's being discussed without you at all in the room. Make sure there's something there to reflect that. Canned reports. So, I mean, that's like 3 paragraphs to say no. Patch reporting versus vuln reporting, right? Blank admin password. If you just have your total numbers, they get really big and scary. If you do say this is just patching, it also lets them know that you're keeping an eye on the configuration stuff and say this is not the configuration stuff. That's a different work stream to reinstall all the web servers and get them off the system partitions, right? Because you're always going to have cat and mouse game. You're always going to have the Microsoft Wave. Every month, there's a ton of patches you haven't deployed yet. Then you deploy that month. Then there's more built up. And that's why that one chart shows that whole, here's what's in queue at any given time. A lot of it's Microsoft-centric. You can do the same thing with your Linux. Get that going on that kind of cycle, too. Compliance is just proving that you're doing everything. So you prove that you're showing reports to people. You prove the remediation's happening, whether you run the reports for patch deployment through the patch management software or show the decrease in your vulnerability management tool. That's what that's all about. So, special purpose reports. Again, for new technologies, you may have a template where you give them, fix these 5 things before you can buy it. Reacting to execs, I already covered, where you save the stuff from the world. Comes in more handy than you think. Comes in very handy. You don't want to scramble putting that stuff together at the last minute. I keep executive decks for director level, VP level, my boss level, business people. I just keep that stuff handy when it happens. Again, make sure you're saving your reports somewhere. Nothing worse than having an audit go on and you can't find your reports, because then they're like, yeah, did you really do them? So, and you know what? Disk space is cheap. So, I will not explain this slide. I will never explain this slide. Next. Data integration points. You can integrate your data with everything. Here's the deal. If you're scanning weekly and people rebuild a server in the middle of the night and they change the OS but keep the IP address and you're automatically integrated with your IDS, something bad's going to happen. Know your data refresh intervals, right? It is cool to get this data into your SIM, but know your data refresh intervals. When you start setting alerting or any actions that are going to happen because of it, know your refresh intervals of your vulnerability data and what you're trying to accomplish. Otherwise, you're going to have your things thinking something's Unix when it's Windows and vice versa and all kinds of crazy stuff. Install versus implementation. Here's the deal. People don't like hearing this one. Actually, I have gotten into a lot of fights with people over this. Okay, so no, it's called work, not fun, right? I will say a note, though, I do like, so for any of the millennials that are here and stuff, we love you, we value you, thank you for showing up. So, it is called work, and we're not paying you just to go play with toys every day. So you do need to read the book and see the movie and plan out the implementation and plan out how you're going to mature the solution. Remember, people, process, technology in that order. The technology can make the process and people do a lot more work and have a lot more things they have to do, but you can keep it at that separate layer. It's always people first, then process, then technology. No one wants to hear this. I've been outsourced. I've outsourced people. That's never going to change. Argue it all you want to. So, install versus implementation is another thing. If all you're going to do is click the button, the old Windows one, file run setup, fine, whatever. I can get a high schooler to come do that for me. Learn how to implement things, not just install them. See this? Process documentation, ugly slide. I love keeping this slide this ugly. Here's the gist of it. You document your scan profiles, naming conventions within the product. How do you name the groupings that you use within your product? You have different business units. So you do company initials, underscore for different department areas, different regions, EMEA versus APAC, etc. How do you handle your product maintenance? Outages for your stuff. How do you do report generation the same way? Do you standardize your scan profiles? How do you purge data out of it? What's the architecture for where it's placed in your network? Here's the deal. For every single product, stealing this from the operational talk, for every product in your environment, if you don't have this, you don't own your tool. It owns you. Have fun with that. You ain't got time to do this? Then don't buy it. I don't care what it is. AV, anything. If you're not operationalizing, standardizing, getting all this stuff, and you can do this in bullet points, by the way, in screenshots. You don't have to write a book. So your tools own you until you're at that level. You're going to do maintenance no matter what anyone tells you. Summarize this one up in a thing. CMM, I believe in it somewhat. Kind of smart alecky. There is no such thing as CMM5 in my world. That's perfection. No one hits it. You go from basically ad hoc to detecting stuff regularly to getting first reviews of documentation, notifying people of things, making things happen, then integrating in your other tool sets, integrating with GRC, right? It's that whole curve. You can actually take this slide and then go to any technology in your environment, modify it for that technology, whether it's SIM or whatever. There's a dashboard you might want to have. Here's our CMM. So we're at 2 for Vul management, and I need another half FTE, another $15K a year to get that up to a 3. Our target's to get to a 3 or a 4. It's another way to get money out of management, show what they're paying for, right? They're not paying you just to have fun with tools. So that's another picture of the puzzle. Do you have a dashboard for every service offering? Here's what happens. You buy a scanning tool that turns into a vulnerability management service offering that's in your service catalog. What's the maturity of your service? Do you track that? What are you doing to improve it or maintain it? What's your burn rate for that? So that kind of affects getting money. I warned you guys I'm a boring business guy. When you're doing stuff like SANS assessments, you can throw the maturity level in there. They don't do that by default. I always add this maturity level and you do it for your company. In my current gig, we use a 4-level maturity level. From have absolutely nothing to we're awesome. Right? And in between. Something else I always cover. I can't believe people haven't read these books. I get really mad about it. I make all the noobs on my team read these books. See this? It ain't perfect. Alright? They're not perfect. This one's a story, a very nice story. That's CMM, or that's ITIL distilled down a little bit. ITIL does work. DevSecOps, I'm not even going to get into that one right now because, man, sounds awful lot like a certain kind of ITIL, just chopped down a lot. We'll see what it really fixes or what it does in the long term. I think it's pretty awesome if it's done right. DevSecOps, not DevOps. Funny story is, I actually had that renamed. I actually talked to a vice presidential level and said, you cannot name that crap DevOps. It won't work. It's got to be DevSecOps. We got to build security in, and actually won that one. So, not directly, but I mouthed off enough about it. Caught on. So these books will help you to structure things because vulnerability management is a service offering. It's a program. It's a way of doing business. It's a way of operationalizing your systems so that you're building that patching and that configuration security in. That's really what it's all about. It's more than just scanning and patching, right? I just leave this in for when people download it. Look at all that crap we have to deal with. You got your doc set for every one of those? Huh? Do you? So again, operationalizing. Basically, summarizing what I'd said earlier, you can use this with your CMDB. CMDBs often scan the environment similar to this. Basically, I reconcile my CMDB team that does still do that because he's got to give it the old try. They still do use my data, and we integrate kind of back and forth to double check each other. So that gives it value to the asset inventory team now, not just the security team or the server teams that are building stuff. If you have different products, don't forget that you might blow out the database on the product. That's not as much an issue now as it used to be. And again, the education and training is, show of hands, how many people have sysadmins right now while they're giving a talk? Well, it's Saturday. Say it was Friday. How many people on a weekday, any given weekday, have sysadmins in their environment logging into their vulnerability management tool on a daily basis? Good. It's where you want to be. Have them using it, right? They're checking out stuff themselves. I have some where they go in and get the results. I've scheduled a scan to run weekly, but my people that run all the workstation images go look at the results on a weekly basis to see what's changing as they're building out new stuff in their labs and getting ready to make changes to the workstation image. These are real old slides for a SOC, but just saying you might do scans daily that just are more of a port scan and have the difference. You might do the ticketing reporting on a weekly basis if you have active patching going on. You're trying to track it that granular versus monthly. And again, scorecards and stuff. This question comes up enough that I just finally started putting something in on it. Can I outsource this stuff? And for small companies, you have to. So again, admittedly, going to go back again, I don't scale down well. I think a lot of us don't. I'm real good in the enterprise space. For SMBs, I suck. I'm just not good at advice for SMBs. I don't have a lot of good answers. To be honest, I'm not paid to figure those answers out. I'm too busy just keeping my jobs going over the years at all the bigger companies I work at. So it's a problem, I think, in our industry that we don't all scale down that well. You should be CMM 2 or 3, though, before you throw anything out, is the argument I make with people. Because no matter what you're going to outsource, unless you're CMM 2 or 3, love this thing. By the way, there's an elevator at work that moves a really lot. I have a coworker, and I'll jump up and down and make the thing until he starts swearing at me. It's fun. Anyway, so CMM 2 or 3, until you're at that level, how are you going to outsource something when you haven't handled the people in the process? Because you're thinking it's like a tool. I'm going to throw this tool off to those people to run the tool. Anybody can run a tool. Doesn't matter. You're not going to get much value from it. So if you're at CMM 2 or 3, then you're going to. And what do you really get? Someone to run the scans, keep the solution up to date, right? Stuff goes sideways. They going to work with the vendor for you? Now you got a third party in between a business unit and a third party. It's usually going to come back to your team. Kind of like when the SOC finds something that you've outsourced to. We see something. Who has all the context in the environment? The security team gets paged at 2 a.m. Right? And then here's a big one that people don't think of. I always keep scanning in-house and recommend companies to do that. I had a very large company keep scanning in-house when they did a global outsourcing deal because I said, how are you going to keep an eye on your vendors and know what's on your network and know if they're really meeting their SLAs for all the patching and hardening and stuff? So out of all the things in your portfolio to outsource, man, vuln management should be the lowest one on the list. Because if you're doing good range-based scanning with full trusted scans, that's your frickin' intel on all your vendors. This is the last one you want to get rid of, and it's usually the first one people throw out, and I'm like, wow, that was dumb. So I know sometimes you can't help it for money. Again, remember, Smart Alec kind of covered that at the beginning, right? WAS scanning only gets one little slide, simple. Don't do all the same mistakes you already did with vulnerability management. Don't hand people a PDF again. It's going to be a different skill set. It's going to require more manual remediation. It's more difficult to do WAS scanning than vulnerability scanning. I always put these in too, and I'm just checking. I don't leave much time for questions. I'll apologize in advance. I'll be around outside and stuff. But one of the things someone did to me once came up to me back in around 1999, said, hey, you know what? he said, you're an asshole. And you're really good at what you do, but you're not the best I've seen. He goes, you should read this book and learn how to talk to people. I've read that book twice. I've decked it out twice. I've made action plans on it over the last 10, 15 years. This book changed my career. Now, for those of you that are in the millennial zone, you're going to have to Google some of the references in here. Because it was like stuff that I heard about from the World War II generation, some of these examples. But I'm just saying, this was a game changer for learning how to communicate with people, because the number one thing you're going to do to affect change is your interpersonal skills that you need to work and develop no matter who you are, probably, right? So that was a big one. Another one, social engineering. That's where it all started. By the way, you know where this was taught first before hackers started talking about social engineering? Back in the 90s, all the business schools, the marketing courses, that was a semester. When you get an undergrad for a business degree, you studied this stuff, how to manipulate people. What do you think marketing is? Marketing is social engineering. They wrote the book on it after the criminals wrote the book on it. Interesting one for building teams and building a brand for your team. You are your service offerings. Your service offerings are you. Period. You got amateurish service offerings because you're doing installs, not implementations. Little kids' tables right over there. Don't know how to talk about likelihood and impact? Right over there, right? So, one quick thing I'll add in on risk, because I like to get this one in. How many people are willing to pay $1,500 a month for car insurance? All right, stop telling your companies to. Another one is, know your data and what it tells you. Here's the example. My wife and I each have a car. How many have heard the thing, women drivers, not quite good as men drivers? How many people have ever been told that? Jokes about it. So here's the interesting thing about that one. There is actuarial data that says the opposite and has for decades, and that's why my teenage daughter was $500 less a year for insurance than the teenage boys. So that's complete crap, a complete fallacy, continually perpetuated, where we have actual data in the insurance industry to show that's not the case. So always double check your assumptions with what your data really tells you. And by the way, the moral of the story there is, I get hit more than my wife. I hit stuff more than my wife with my car. $500 deductible on hers, mine's at the $250 because we pay that shit on me more often because I suck. All right? That's a risk-based decision. If you think about that for your own house, because that extra $80 a month that you pay for that higher deductible matters to you, take that to work with you. That's some of the risk-based stuff. So, you all know business. Yay. Stop saying you don't. You run your own freaking budget. You make your own car insurance decisions. Guess what? You know risk. You know business. Now, I usually don't leave much time for questions. This was no different. My apologies for the rough start. I have a lame old laptop. What didn't happen is I've actually been ignoring the updates on this laptop for a month, hoping it would pop up to remind me as a lesson of what happens when you let users control their own fate for updates. But anyway, if you see me outside with questions, we can do a couple quick ones as I'm tearing down. I'll be outside a little bit. I do actually have cool stickers I made. So I'm a corporate InfoSec blank and an InfoSec zombie. That's just what I do. So I live in large corporate environments. And, I'm just one of them boring old blue teamer dudes, but I actually have been using stuff since like Knoppix and Wapix days to test my crap. So I know a little bit about the hacky kind of stuff, but I'm not a hacker. I don't claim to be one. I'm just a corporate schmuck trying to make everyone happy and failing all the way around. So, all right. Appreciate your time. Hopefully you got something useful. If I can do a quick question if you want. I promise not to say maybe it depends. Anyone got a quick one or? So the question is, why is it bad to put vulnerabilities by host as a metric? Because it's really hard to back up the science on that. I can have something that has 3 vulnerabilities that are remotely exploitable, that they're not there's no real canned exploits available for them. I can have one host that has 1 vulnerability. That vulnerability is a blank admin password, and literally, this guy could get into it. He could type it with his paws because it's no password. So you've just invalidated that type of reporting. We used to get in those arguments a lot in the early 2000s, and we all finally came down to, when you do that, you get in trouble, because then if you do have something bad happen, you're going to get nailed. You're going to get raked over the coals for that one. Any others? If not, I appreciate your time. Hopefully you got something useful out of it.